it's time for reading today, and we are still working on Frindle. Remember I told you we're going to start reading a novel together? Well, we started Thursday of last week, and we did my introduction to Frindle, right? And I told you a little bit about it, and you made an inference about the front cover. Well, Friday, you did chapter 1, and we talked about the characters, and we talked about a visualization of chapter 1. Well, today we're going to do chapter 2 and chapter 3, and we're going to start talking about plot within Frindle. Okay, so before we start this, I want you to make a prediction. What kind of kid do you think Nick is going to turn out to be? So remember, when we were making our little character, we put down some character traits of Nick. Remember, characters, they can have internal traits, something from their heart. Are they nice? Are they kind? Do you love them? Are they a good person, a bad person, a villain? Or they can have external traits. They have blonde hair, blue eyes. So there are things of the way that you think that they look, but there's also things that are in their heart that you know about them. So we talked about Nick. He's the main character. That's what we said. He also has red hair and glasses. That's some external traits, but some internal traits we talked about. Nick was kind of a troublemaker, according to chapter 1. So make a prediction right now in your head. What do you think Nick is going to turn out to be by the end? Do you think he's going to have a character change? Do you think he's going to be a good kid? Do you think he's going to be a bad kid? If I had to predict, I predict that Nick will go through a character change and will become a hero. That's my prediction. Maybe it'll come true, maybe it won't. Keep that in your brain because maybe you'll be right and we'll figure that out later. All right, so before I start, I want to talk about plot. Now, I know that you have seen plot before because they teach it in 3rd grade and 2nd grade and 1st grade, but plot is like the sequence of events in a story. So almost every book, every fiction book, chapter book is going to have a plot. It's what happens in the book. Now, there are fancy words that go with every single section of this plot chart. Now, this plot chart looks like a mountain with 2 little ends right here, and then it comes up into a mountain. So, the first part is an exposition. Now, you think that sounds real scary. An exposition is just like the beginning. The characters and the setting. That's all an exposition is. It's the beginning part of a story. Then we have the rising action. That's the part of the story that develops the problem or conflict through a series of events that build interest and suspense. So we already read chapter 1. So we're going to start a plot chart today where we label the exposition. We might, by the end of chapter 2 and 3, get the rising action, but we might not. Then the climax is the turning point of the story where the problem reaches its peak. When the problem is it's very, 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 very top. That's your problem, your climax. So you're thinking of stories a roller coaster, right? You start off, you figure out the characters and setting. You're chugging along, dun, 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 and you're going up the hill on a roller coaster. Dun, 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 going up, and it's building. Stuff's happening. Events are happening, building. You get to the very tip top of the first hill on the roller coaster, and you're like, uh-oh, here it comes. That's your problem. You're like, oh no, here it comes. And then you start going down that roller coaster and it's like, woo! Well, that's the falling action. So these are the events that happen after the climax that lead to a solution, the resolution. So again, exposition, I just kind of find out a little bit of what's going on. Rising action. Oh my gosh, I'm finding more out. Events are happening. Sorry, I'm trying to make you see this. Events are happening. Woo, I get to the top of the roller coaster. There's my problem, my climax. Now, I'm going down the roller coaster. This is where things start to get better. It's starting to end. The climax is being resolved. Events are happening. And then I get to the resolution at the very bottom. And that's the conclusion of the story that tells you what the solution was. So I want you to think of plot as a roller coaster. Again, you're chugging along, right? You're chugging along. Dun, 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 dun. Exposition. I found out the characters. Found out the setting. I'm going up the hill. Okay, some events are happening. It's not looking good. You get to the problem of your story at the very, very top, and you're like, oh my gosh! And then you scream on your way down because these are the events that are happening that are leading to a resolution. And you get to the end and you're like, okay, problem solved. The roller coaster's over. And then you pick up the next book in the series and you keep reading and your plot starts all over again. So remember, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. So we're going to label a plot chart together over Frindle. That'll be really fun because plot is so interesting to me. I think it is so cool how every book has a plot. So before we start, let's go ahead and label some stuff that we know right now about Frindle. So I'm just going to title mine Frindle Plot Chart. I'm going to draw the plot chart. So we have exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Okay, so right now, our exposition. We know some characters. Our main characters, I'm going to write exposition. Our main characters are Nick Allen and Mrs. Granger. Now, I mentioned a whole lot of other people, but this is kind of what we know right now, just based off of chapter 1. And your setting was we were in school. Okay, so we might get to the rising action. We might not today. We'll see. But we're going to read chapter 2 and 3, and we'll see if we get there. All right, chapter 2, Mrs. Granger. 5th grade was different. That was the year to get ready for middle school. 5th grade meant passing classes. It meant no morning recess. It meant real letter grades on your report cards. But most of all, it meant Mrs. Granger. There were about 150 kids in 5th grade, and there were 7 5th grade teachers, 2 math, 2 science, 2 social studies, but only 1 language art teacher. In language arts, Mrs. Granger had a monopoly and a reputation. Mrs. Granger lived alone in a tidy little house in the older part of town. She drove an old pale blue car to school every morning. Rain or shine, snow or sleet, hail or wind, she had a perfect attendance record that stretched back further than anyone could remember. Her hair was almost white, swept away from her face up into something like a nest on the back of her head. And unlike some of the younger women teachers, she never wore pants to school. She had 2 skirt and jacket outfits, her gray uniform and her blue uniform, which she always wore over a white shirt with a little cameo pin at the neck. And Mrs. Granger was one of those people who never sweats. It had to be over 90 degrees before she even took off her jacket. She was small as teachers go. There were even some 5th graders who were taller, but Mrs. Granger seemed like a giant. It was her eyes that did it. They were dark gray, and if she turned them on full power, they could make you feel like a speck of dust. Oop, there's a simile. Feel like a speck of dust. It's comparing their feelings to a speck of dust. What does it mean by that? Feel like a speck of dust? It's saying that he feels small, making him feel small. Okay, let's keep going. Her eyes could twinkle and laugh too, and kids said she could crack really funny jokes, but it wasn't the jokes that made her famous. Everyone was sure that Mrs. Granger had X-ray vision. Don't even think about chewing a piece of gum within 50 feet of her. If you did, Mrs. Granger would see you and catch you and make you stick the gum into a bright yellow index card. Then she would safety pin the card to the front of your shirt, and you'd have to wear it for the rest of the school day. After that, you had to take it home and have your mom or dad sign the card and bring it back to Mrs. Granger the next day. And it didn't matter to Mrs. Granger if you weren't in 5th grade, because the way she saw it, sooner or later, you would be. All the kids at Lincoln Elementary School knew that at the end of the line, 5th grade, Mrs. Granger would be the one grading their spelling test and their reading test, and worst of all, their vocabulary test, week after week, month after month. Every language arts teacher in the world enjoys making kids use the dictionary. Check your spelling, check that definition, check those syllable breaks. But Mrs. Granger didn't just enjoy the dictionary, she loved the dictionary. Almost worshipped it. Her weekly vocabulary list was 35 words long, sometimes longer. Y'all think that I need to learn a lesson from Miss Granger and make y'all do 35 words? Mrs. Granger sounds like the best teacher ever, right? Not. She sounds mean. As if that wasn't bad enough, there was a word for the day on the blackboard every morning. If you gave yourself a day off and you didn't write one down and look it up and learn the definition, sooner or later, Mrs. Granger would find out, and then, just for you, there would be 2 words for the day for a whole week. Okay, let's go back. Ooh, look at that, Mrs. Granger. Mrs. Granger kept a full set of 30 dictionaries on a shelf at the back of the room, but her pride and joy was one of those huge dictionaries with every word in the universe in it, the kind of book it takes 2 kids to carry. It sat on its own little table at the front of her classroom, sort of like the altar at the front of the church. Every graduate of Lincoln Elementary School for the past 35 years could remember standing at that table, listening to Mrs. Granger's battle cry, "Look it up! That's why we have a dictionary!" Even before the school year started. When it was still the summer before 5th grade for Nick and his friends, Mrs. Granger was already busy. Every parent of every new 5th grader got a letter from her. Nick's mom read part of it out loud during dinner one night in August. Every home is expected to have a good dictionary in it so that each student can do his or her homework properly. Good spelling and good grammar and good word skills are essential for every student. Clear thinking requires a command of the English language, and 5th grade is the ideal time for every girl and boy to acquire an expanded vocabulary. And then there was a list of the dictionaries that Mrs. Granger thought would be acceptable for home study. Mrs. Allen said, "So nice to have a teacher who takes her work this seriously." Nick groaned and tried to enjoy the rest of his hamburger, but even watermelon for dessert didn't cheer him up. Nick had no particular use for the dictionary. He liked words a lot, and he was good at using them, but he figured that he got all the words he needed just by reading, and he read all the time. When Nick ran into a word he didn't know, he asked his brother, his dad, or whoever was handy what it meant, and if they knew, they'd tell him. But not Mrs. Granger. He had heard all about her, and he had seen 5th graders in the library last year, noses stuck in their dictionaries, frantically trying to finish their vocabulary sheets before English class. It was still a week before school, and Nick already felt like 5th grade was going to be a very long year. Now, we are going to read chapter 3 here in just a second, but I want to go back to our character list, and I want to add some stuff about Mrs. Granger because we didn't know anything. We don't have Mrs. Granger on the sheet. Okay. So let's add Mrs. Granger. What do you know? So it told us some characteristics of her physically. So we know, let's go back real quick. She was tall with dark gray, tall with dark gray eyes, right? That's some characteristics, some physical characteristics. Her outside, tall, dark gray eyes. She seems strict. She seems mean, to me at least, right? She kind of seems scary too. Okay, strict, mean, scary. Those are the things that I'm thinking. Are y'all thinking some of the same things? Okay, so do we have any events that are leading up to some rising action going on? So I'm going to write real quick, like way over here. Now, rising action can be a lot of things that lead up to the biggest problem. Let's keep reading and see if anything else sparks our memory while we're reading. Maybe there will be, this is going to take us a long time to fill out because the book is going to take us a while to read. So let's keep going with chapter 3. The first day of school was always a get acquainted day. Books were passed out and there was a lot of chatter. Everyone asked, "What did you do over the summer?" Periods 1 through 6 went by very smoothly for Nick, but then came period 7. Mrs. Granger's class was all business. The first thing they did was take a vocabulary pretest to see how many of the 35 words for the week the kids already knew. Tremble, circular, orchestra. The list went on and on. Nick knew most of them. Then there was a handout about class procedures. After that, there was a review paper about cursive writing. And then there was a sample sheet showing how the heading should look on every assignment. No let up for 37 minutes straight. Nick was an expert at asking the delaying question, also known as the teacher stopper or the guaranteed time waster. 3 minutes before the bell, in that split second between the end of today's classwork and the announcement of tomorrow's homework, Nick could launch a question guaranteed to sidetrack the teacher long enough to delay or even wipe out the homework assignment. Timing was important, but asking the right question, that was the hard part. Questions about stuff in the news, questions about the college the teacher went to, questions about the teacher's favorite book or sport or hobby. Nick knew all the tricks, and he had been very successful in the past. Here he was in 5th grade, near the end of his very first language arts class with Mrs. Granger, and Nick could feel a homework assignment coming the way a farmer can feel a rainstorm. Ooh, that was good imagery, good figurative language. Nick could feel a homework assignment coming the way a farmer can feel a rainstorm. Man, I wish I could write that good. Mrs. Granger paused to catch her breath, and Nick's hand shot up. She glanced down at her seating chart and then up at him. Her sharp gray eyes were not even turned up to half power. Yes, Nicholas? Mrs. Granger, you have so many dictionaries in this room, and that huge one especially. Where did all those words come from? Did they just get copied from other dictionaries? It sure is a big book. It was a perfect thought grenade. Kapow! Boom! Onomatopoeia. Man, this dude is good with the figurative language. Several kids smiled, and a few peeked at the clock. Nick was famous for this, and the whole class knew what he was doing. Unfortunately, so did Mrs. Granger. She hesitated a moment and gave Nick a smile that was just a little too sweet to be real. Her eyes were the color of a thundercloud. Okay, guys, another figurative language. Her eyes were the color of a thundercloud. That is trying to get you to picture what's going on. Think of a thundercloud. When you picture that, what do you think? Gray, dark, mean, right? That's a metaphor. It's comparing her eyes to a thundercloud without using like or as. Let's keep going. Why? What an interesting question, Nicholas. I could talk about that for hours, I bet. She glanced around the classroom. Do the rest of you want to know too? Everyone nodded yes. Very well then, Nicholas. Will you do some research on that subject and give a little oral report to the class? If you find out the answer yourself, it will mean so much more than if I just told you. Please have your report ready for our next class. Oh, shots fired, Nick. Mrs. Granger smiled at him again, very sweetly. Then it was back to business. Now, the homework for tomorrow can be found on page 12 of your Words Alive book. Nick barely heard the assignment. His heart was pounding. He felt small, very small. He could feel the tops of his ears glowing red. A complete shutdown, an extra assignment, and probably a little black mark next to his name on the seating chart. Everything he had heard about this teacher was true. Don't mess around with the lone Granger. Okay, he could feel the tops of his ears glowing red. Did it say he was embarrassed? No, it used imagery to get you to picture it, what you can see. His ears were glowing red. Wow, Andrew Clements does a great job with all of that, with his figurative language. Okay, so that was good, guys. Mrs. Granger, she's mean. She's got tall, gray eyes. I kind of see her as being a little intimidating, right? I'm a little freaked out about Mrs. Granger. So I'm going to add intimidating on here. So let's look at plot real quick. We've added Nick, Allen, Mrs. Granger, and they are at school. Do we have any rising action yet? I think some rising action normally is like more than one event. So I'm going to put one event for now. Oh, I don't like this marker. I'm going to try another one because I'm thinking an event that's probably going to lead to our problem is Nick started 5th grade with Mrs. Granger. I'm thinking that's probably going to be one event that leads to our problem. I left so much space because there's probably going to be more. The problem normally comes around the middle of the book. So maybe chapter 10, 11, we'll start to figure out what the problem is, and we'll revisit this plot chart and we'll add more to it. Okay, guys, today we talked about plot. We read chapters 2 and 3. We heard about the mean Mrs. Granger. Have you guys ever had a teacher that just really was not very nice? Sometimes you get teachers like that. I hope I'm not one of them, but sometimes you do get teachers like that, and you're like, man, and you just don't click with them. It happens. Can you make a connection to Nick? All right, I love you guys so much. Tomorrow we'll read 1, maybe 2 more chapters, and we'll talk about another thing, and we'll keep working on plot and characters and figurative language, because this is how you apply the strategies I teach you to a novel. All right, I love y'all. Today for your assignment, you're going to answer some questions below on chapters 2 and 3 that we just read. They should be real quick and easy. Bye.